Hello there.
Well, this week I was supposed to be doing a video on my Recruit Rampagers, but today, seeing as I'm behind on that video and GW gave me a ton of healthy drama at the beginning of the week to talk about, I'm here to discuss that. Specifically, I'm talking about the most recent price hike that's going on in June at Games Workshop stores. This is meant to be a balanced look all around with points for and against. I'm also going to include some breakdowns comparing the cost of the hobby before and after in several countries, and detail how maybe some various hobbyists might view the value of these boxes, and we can see exactly what the price hike is actually going to do to our hobby expenses. Well, here it is, the article. Basically, they list out that it's an unfortunate world we live in. Everything gets more expensive. Food, materials, transport, all trending upwards. Basically, inflation. Warhammer is not immune to that. They state that on the 10th of June, they'll be increasing some prices in our Warhammer stores and on warhammer.com. They don't specify which some means, but most likely all of the minis, because they do go into detail that the price changes for individual products will vary. But in most countries, the average change will be between 3 and 5%. As an example, what you can expect, a squad of Necron warriors goes up $2 from 50 to 52, 30 euros to 31.50, or sorry, pounds, and then 40 euros to 41 pounds. Euros, my bad. Basically, this is a 4% increase on the Necron warriors. The prices of some of the other products aren't changing, such as paints, paint sets, White Dwarf, Black Library products. They don't state codexes, but I'm assuming that's going to be kind of lumped in there with the books. Who knows? And then they state at the end, like, they understand that nobody likes the prices. Price hikes, they've done their best to keep it down, and they're giving us a heads up so we can buy before they go up. However, in Sweden and Norway, the average price will be between 8 and 14%, though I think given the stability of the country, that probably, tracks appropriately and isn't actually just gouging these countries out. But I don't know. But there we go. Basically, a 3 to 5% increase across the board for GW products. So, using the Necron Warriors as kind of like a benchmark, as they did in their Warhammer community article, I decided to compare minimum wages against the increased prices. So, we have this chart here broken down by country, and given kind of what we have various stats like the minimum wage of the country, the value of one of that country's currency compared to the US dollar, the price before and after the hike, so what it currently is worth now, what it will be after the increase, and how much time it would take to earn in hours if you were making that minimum wage. I've also just have notes on the side kind of detailing how I got to that minimum wage stat, because it's a little bit difficult for some of these, as you'll see as I go through. So starting with the UK, they have a minimum wage of $11.44 British pounds. 1 British pound is about 1.25 USD. The current price of the Warriors are 30 pounds, and they're going up to 31.50. That takes about 2.5 to 3 hours to earn now. It's going to take about 2.75 to 3 hours to earn after this increase. Really not a change in time to earn. I use the wage for adults. I know there are several minimum wages or at least one minimum wage for people under age of majority. So, if you're a teenager, you might be making a little bit less than that. Next up is the EU. So basically every country that doesn't have its own country's based web store will buy off of this web store. The minimum wage I used here, there's a large variety of minimum wages in the EU. So I just used what I found for labor minimum wages, which averaged between 23 and 30. I took the value of 30, the higher end value, because I know some countries have wildly disproportionately higher wages than others. And I figured to make things fair, we'd go with what laborers would make on the higher end. €1 is equivalent to 1.08 USD. The current price of the boxes is 40. They're going up to 41.6, and it's going to take you about an hour and a half to 2 hours to earn these. Not that big of a deal. If you wanted to buy, a whole multiple boxes of Necron Warriors, an 8-hour shift will get you at least 3 or 4. So, EU prices are looking pretty good. If you're in the States, The minimum wage, at least what I'm going with, which is the federal minimum wage, is $7.25. Some states will have provisions that small businesses can pay their employees like $2 to $4 an hour. If you work in the food service industry, you might also be sub minimum wage. Whereas if you live in places like DC, you might be making $16 USD an hour. So I went with federal minimum wage. There's no good way of staking out what the average is due to all these special rulings and industry nuances. So that's the value we went with for, well, Canada and the States we did the same with. Right now, you're paying $50 for this. You're going to be paying $52 with that 4% price hike. This is going to take you about 7.5 to 8 hours to earn. So basically a full day shift to get if you're living in the United States. It's not a big change. It's just kind of ridiculous overall. That's quite a high price. Obviously, though, if you're making 16 USD an hour, you're going to be making it on the same rate as we see with Canada here, roughly. Federal minimum wage is 17.3 in Canada. I know some provinces are lagging behind. They might be as low as 15 right now, whereas some are as high as 19. Where I'm at in Vancouver, for example, is at 17.30 exactly, which used to be a high minimum wage in the country, but then the federal caught up and now it's average. So 1 Canadian dollar is equal to 0.74 USD. You're going to be paying $60 for these Necron Warriors now. They're going to go up to $62.04. 40 cents. And with the federal minimum wage, it's going to take 3.5 to 4 hours to earn, which is the same price as adults in Australia. So if you're at the adult minimum wage, similar to the UK, they have different age gates for minimum wages. Adults, 23.23. 1 Australian dollar is 65 USD, or not 65 USD, goddamn, 0.65 USD. $77 or Australian dollars right now for the box set. It's going to go up to 80. You will be looking at, again, no different than what you're currently having to work to earn it, or what Canada has to work to earn it, which is 3.5 to 4 hours. Now we get to the 2 wildcard countries. So the Swedish krono and the Norway krone. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that, so I'm going to say second knock from here on. These countries don't have a minimum wage, which is kind of unique for a developed nation. So I guess that means everybody's salaried. So what I took was the minimum average monthly salary and then divided it by the standard 160-hour work week. Now, I openly admit I'm very unfamiliar with such the system. If you're from those countries, let me know if my math checks out. I don't know. Do you do 160-hour work weeks? How does the salary get paid out? If you get... again, I don't know how your systems work out, but I kind of feel like the time to earn in Sweden is wrong. So due to my math, in Sweden, apparently the minimum wage is about 193 krono an hour. It's about 9.2, it's about 0.92 USD for 1 Swedish krono and Norway krono. You're looking at 36,000 for the box set now, and it's going to go up to 39,960 after the price hike. My math leads me to believe that it's going to take 207 to 210 hours to earn, which seems wrong. I couldn't figure out how to, or what value I could use to kind of correct this. I'm going to lean into that value being wrong, and everything kind of plays out the same as it does in Norway. Norway's minimum wage is 325 NOK per hour, which puts the price of this box set right now is 330 NOK, and it's going up to 366 NOK. This puts it at literally like 1.1 to 1.5 hours to earn, which makes it the quickest to earn outside of the EU, and definitely much quicker to earn than any of the North American countries. I'm willing to bet Sweden is more in this category, given how similar these two nations kind of are economically, strength-wise, and all that. But if you're from there, please let me know if that value is wrong. Because if you're having to work, like, what is 210 hours? That's over like a month. That's over a month of work for a box of Necron Warriors. That's ridiculous. I mean, I think all things considered here, like a price hike is never a good thing, right? The prices have gone up. Not 100% sure if GW needed to raise prices like this for inflation. But, you know, it is important to note that as a publicly traded company, they are always under obligation to make money for their shareholders. And any time they're in a position to adjust money, adjust prices to cover the costs of inflation to ensure that their profit margins don't change or actually increase, they're going to take. It's the unfortunate reality of business in a capitalist world. It also, you know, produces a lot of great miniatures and content for us to enjoy. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword there. GW raises prices, but they have a product we all want, so we still buy it. And then that justifies continued increases to price, despite the fact that their profit margin is nearly double that of most other businesses. And they could, as a business, you know, maybe eat inflation costs a little bit. However, I can't exactly hold it against them for not doing so. And when you break down the math, it doesn't translate, at least to me, when I break it down just at this raw numbers level. Again, I'm in Canada. I'm definitely making a little bit more than that minimum wage there. But even if I was, like, half a day's worth of work for the Necron Warriors, you know, given how long I'm going to take to paint that. Actually, let's get into that next. Yes. Go to the next slide here. So this is how I would value that box set for me personally. And this, you can write this off as complete lunatic ramblings. This is stupid. But this is how I'd value it. So I'm going to be spending about an hour of my time building and listening to a podcast or whatever of that kit. There's 10 warriors, 2 scarabs in that box set, right? Are the scarabs in that box set? Doesn't matter. The scarabs you literally stick onto the base. They hardly account for time. So about an hour, let's say, of building that box of warriors. The way I paint, I'm probably going to put 2 hours of painting and basing into each miniature at a minimum. So I'd say for the full squad, a good 20 hours of painting. And then let's say I play 10 games with my crons over the course of an edition, 4 hours each, you know, give or take, if we're playing 1500 or 2K point games. I'm looking at a good 61 hours of value out of that one box set. Which if you multiplied that by the minimum wage, you get, you know, $1,000.55 deducted by the price of the warriors, a difference of $993. If time is money, you know, this is how it would be valued at. Obviously, I'm not gaining $993 on this transaction here. I'm just saying the entertainment value has quite a long tail for me. I get a lot of fun out of building, painting, and gaming. I do engage in all aspects of the hobby. So the price increase has not dramatically changed how I value or how I view the value of Games Workshop products, especially with how I kind of go about buying things, but we'll get into that in another slide. However, I do recognize the fact that, like, if you're, say, a gamer, your value and your time spent doing things is going to change. You might only spend 5 hours painting. You might only spend 1 hour building. But over the course of edition, then this is just like, you know, you play crons. You're not a multi-armied person. Let's say you play, you know, you play for the whole edition, you get 100 hours of gaming in at various points of games. You're an avid gamer. You're going to your shops regularly. That box of warriors has just given you 106 hours of entertainment over the course of 3 years. When multiplied by my minimum wage in Canada here, you know, you get 1,833, or a difference of 1771, which is quite a lot of value. But again, this just assumes you value your time the same way that your employees do, or sorry, employers do, which is not always a healthy way of looking at things. But if we're just breaking down entertainment value to price point, it's not terrible. Painters get a little less value out of this. They're spending most of their time painting, but building and gaming might not necessarily be a priority to them. They may game every now and then after hanging out with their hobbying buddies. You know, they get a game or two in here. But I'd still say, you know, if you're painting a box of Necron Warriors and you're an avid painter, you'd probably be painting non-metallic metals. Let's say you have, you know, 5 hours a mini, right, for non-metallic metals plus basing. So we'd say, I kind of threw in the number of 50 here. Quite a bit time painting. You still get a difference of $906. And And then finally, the final group, the group that actually, I don't believe there is actually a large market of people who just build their minis and then maybe play a game with it and then do nothing else. But if you are one of those people who buys a kit, you build it, you're not really into it, and the hobby doesn't bite, I would argue that, yeah, this is a terrible, terrible value. Looking at the total time you spent on the hobby, let's say 2 hours here, 3 hours, you're barely covering the cost of the box of Warriors. You might actually be losing $27, if you will, if you feel like you've wasted those 2 hours of your time. So yeah, I'd argue that for builders, for people who just compulsively build or collect boxes of gray, the price hike is bad, but it's always been bad for you, bad value for buck. Real quick, I just wanted to cover how I go about spending money in the hobby. The main thing I do is I go about buying launch edition boxes. So I really go out of my way to wake up and be the first to be in pre-order line, whether that's at LGS, at my Warhammer store, online, whatever, to get some launch edition boxes. These typically sell out quite fast, but are typically, found in your local gaming stores a month or so after launch as well. So if you keep an eye out, it's quite easy to get these rather well volumed produced launch edition boxes. I mean, Indominus had some launch problems until they did the made to order thing. Leviathan, at least in Canada, don't know of anybody who struggled to get the box if they wanted to get the box. It's a great way of getting armies on the cheap. The problem with the edition launch box sets is that they will always include Space Marines to some degree. So if you're exclusively a Xenos player, half the box set immediately loses value to you unless you can, reliably flip that for coin. Whereas, maybe you don't play the other Xenos faction in there and you're not interested in starting Necrons in Indominus or Tyranids in Leviathan, then these kind of struggle for value. But as for myself, this is how I purchase Warhammer. I am a Marine player and I am a Xenos player. I aim to get a new Marine chapter in per edition, as well as one new Xenos army or completed Xenos army to 2K. So for me, these launch edition boxes, such as Indominus, was great. I got a massive kickstart to my Space Wolves and Necron. And the most recent Leviathan box set was fantastic because not only was its value through the roof, it gave me a massive starting force for my Ultramarines and a massive addition to my my very first army in the hobby, which was the Tyranids. So these are amazing value for dollar. And if you can and collect the armies in the box set, I'd always say aim to buy them. The next thing I do is I target the various other discounted box sets, such as army boxes or battle forces. So recently I created the core of my Leagues of Votann over the army set and the Tau Empire set. The Crew Hunting Pack I also recently picked up because it gave me a discount on the Codex and a bunch of miniatures to paint. I don't necessarily need all the carnivores in the box, so I'm probably going to sell one of the carnivore sprues. I really just wanted the Codex and the Rampagers, so its value to me is quite high. I got a bunch of stuff at discount. I can sell stuff for a little bit greater than that discount, but still at a discount to GW, so it's easy to sell, but also easy to profit off of. And I get the book, and the book was the main draw there. So these sets are always a good bang for buck. If you can get them, they get you typically they are a little bit under 500 points, but this plus a character, you can start playing combat patrol. So you can't play combat patrol. That means something else now, but you can play 500 point games with a lot of these sets, especially if you're pairing them with a launch box set. Obviously we haven't had Kroot or Votann in an edition launch, but if you're a Marine player, watch out for your army boxes especially. There are other options. I also supplemented my collection over the 9th edition with the Imperium magazine, and I'm going to be getting the Combat Patrol magazine as well once that comes to Canada. The Imperium was available in USA and Canada and the UK as well. Combat Patrol is still, I think, UK only. It might be Europe only, but it should come later to NA and elsewhere. These are great value savings. I think the Imperium mag was like 2100 CAD worth of Warhammer for about 1200. So it's a huge savings. And again, because I collected Marines, because I collected Necrons, the Imperium magazine's value was huge. And I got a bunch of terrain for my box set. I sold a lot of the Mechanicus. I sold some of the Sisters. And Tyranids. Like there was stuff in there I wanted, stuff in there I didn't. Overall, it helped me build out two 2,000 point forces for quite a bit cheaper than it would have been to buy each box off the shelves individually. You've also got your local game stores that carry Games Workshop products. They often have like a 10 to 15% discount compared to the Games Workshop stores. In Canada, I've used both Sunward Hobbies and Fenris Workshop. And to do so, though, they only offer in-country shipping. So if you're out of country, the two options I just listed won't work for you. Check online for your local gaming retailers that ship internally. eBay's also a great place. As I mentioned, like Imperium Magazine and with some of the launch boxes, people often sell a sprue or two that they don't need. Sometimes it's a repeated troop choice, such as the Kroot Carnivores. I don't need 50 Kroot Carnivores. I can have 40 and be fine with them. Whereas, or sometimes it's characters such as the Biologus from Leviathan. A lot of people have them. It comes in multiple discount option sets that end up on eBay for the cheap quite often. So these are other good ways of buying the individual minis that can round out your point values as well. At the end of the day, there are multiple ways to buy into the hobby at a cheaper price point, but Warhammer has always been expensive, and the most recent price hike isn't making it any more unobtainable, at least to my math, than it was before. I do agree that Games Workshop needs to have better, lower value entry points into the hobby. Custodians and Combat Patrol boxes aren't quite enough, because what, it's like $120 for a Combat Patrol. You still need paint, you still need a rule book, you still need all that stuff. You're still looking at like a $300 to $400 minimum investment into the hobby if you want to be able to collect, paint, and game. So they need to do a better job of decreasing entry points, whether that means free codexes, free digital codexes. Maybe you only pay for like a hardback cover with all the lore, but the core rule codex is just a PDF online with no flair. Like, they need to figure out a way of decreasing people's friction to get into the hobby. I don't necessarily think we're ever going to get to a world where Games Workshop lowers their prices. As a publicly traded company, any excuse they can to increase, they will. We can hold it against them if we want, but that's the system that they work in at the end of the day. So it sucks to a certain extent. I don't think the price increase personally is going to affect people's ability to hobby too much. I think the outrage is just one good cinematic away from going. And I think it's important to buy savvy. Don't just buy direct from Games Workshop because they're selling it and they're the official place. Find retailers on the cheap. I use Fenris Workshop in Canada. They're so great. They're on a different time zone. So when pre-orders go live midnight their time, which means I got to buy my Kroot Army box set at 10 p.m. the night before it was supposed to launch in Vancouver, as opposed to waiting till 10 a.m. in the morning on Saturday in Games Workshop's online queue for a chance to buy it. Now, their online queue system works, at least in Canada. I've never had an issue getting in and buying stuff when I've camped it out overnight. But again, it's important to remember that there are cheaper alternatives to purchasing, both physically and online. And we should take that every opportunity we get. Anyways, just my 2 cents and overall feelings about the price hike. Hope y'all have a good day. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see y'all next time. Hopefully with some painted minis.